Picture yourself sitting at a dinner table. The wine is pouring, people are laughing, and the conversation is warm. You are smiling at all the right moments. But while your physical body is occupying a chair, your mind is watching the evening unfold like a movie you've already seen. In 2009, writer John Koenig coined a word for this specific feeling: exulansis. It comes from the Latin for living in exile. It describes the tendency to giz up trying to talk about an experience because the people around you simply cannot relate to it. There is no grand argument that triggers this retreat. It happens through a quiet, steady accumulation of small self-corrections. It is the pause before you answer a question, choosing the polite, expected response over the complicated truth. This creates a feeling distinctly different from ordinary loneliness. Ordinary loneliness is the absence of people. This is the peculiar isolation of being surrounded by friends and realizing you haven't actually entered the room. You can see the mechanics of this everywhere. It is the text message you rewrite 3 times before finally just deleting it. It is someone asking how you are, genuinely wanting to know, and you responding with, "I'm good, just a bit tired." We often label this behavior as social exhaustion or anxiety, but it is actually a highly rational cost-benefit analysis. Your brain is weighing the high emotional effort required to explain a complex feeling against the extremely low probability that the person listening will truly understand it. Over time, the math simply stops making sense. You haven't lost your desire for human connection. Your nervous system has just become a highly accurate statistician of intimacy, quietly recalibrating the odds and advising you to save your breath. Consider how this plays out for a highly functional person over a decade. They are present at meetings, they remember birthdays, and they are genuinely dead company. Yet, when asked about themselves, they consistently provide an abbreviated, carefully edited version of reality. In 1990, psychologist Dale Larson defined this exact behavior as self-concealment. He described it as the active, ongoing psychological effort to keep personal thoughts, feelings, and experiences hidden from the outside world. Larson's team reviewed 137 studies across 40,000 participants. Hiding your inner self is directly linked to depression and anxiety. Your brain is forced to do 2 jobs simultaneously, processing the external conversation while continually managing the internal gap. Replying that you are fine stops being a harmless social nicety. It becomes a strenuous cognitive tax, quietly compounding every hour of every day until you are entirely depleted. Before entering a room, you start doing an internal inventory. You sit in your car, checking the script, deciding which version of your performed self is required for the people you will see. Psychologist Elizabeth Pennell identifies this state as existential isolation. You can maintain a successful career, a healthy, stable marriage, and a wide circle of friends, while carrying the crushing certainty that your true inner experience is completely inaccessible to anyone else. Herein lies the paradox. You stop explaining yourself to protect against the sting of being misunderstood, but by withholding your reality, you systematically eliminate any chance for the people who love you to actually know you. Exulansis functions as a perfectly engineered trap. The longer you stay in it, the more flawless your external performance becomes. Meanwhile, the actual original version of you recedes so far beneath the surface that eventually even you cannot reach it. The cost of this performance is strictly biological. Maintaining a divided self over the course of a lifetime exacts a severe, measurable toll on the human body. A landmark series of studies by Julianne Holt-Lundstad at Brigham Young University sought to quantify exactly what happens to our physiology when we experience persistent, perceived social disconnection. This comparative bar graph displays the alarming health risks associated with different lifestyle factors, focusing on early mortality. The data reveals that feeling unseen while surrounded by people increases your risk of early mortality by up to 32%. To put that danger into perspective, researchers calculated the physical equivalent of this invisible isolation. The biological strain of maintaining this emotional gap is identical to the damage caused by smoking 15 cigarettes a day.
Your body makes no distinction between physical poisons and emotional ones. The very mechanism you developed to protect your feelings is actively destroying your physical health.
The emotional ledger has failed. The rational, calculated choice to hide your true self mathematically guarantees the breakdown of the mind and body it was originally designed to keep safe. We like to think of a secret as a passive object, something we hold securely in a box. In reality, a secret is an active, corrosive force. It holds you hostage, humming quietly beneath every polite interaction. The only way out is to stop managing the distance. You have to drop the exhausting script, step out of the protective shadow, and take the raw risk of being seen exactly as you are. Explaining yourself will always carry the risk of being misunderstood, but that momentary discomfort is trivial compared to the fatal, silent cost of remaining entirely unseen. You will tell a complete stranger things you never told your best friend. You do it in waiting rooms, hotel lobbies, and on airplanes. You sit down next to a seatmate you have never met, and within 20 minutes, you're detailing a career failure or a doubt about your marriage that you've never dared to voice at home. We do this because impermanence feels safe. The stranger on the train has no investment in who you were yesterday and no expectation of who you will be tomorrow. Because you will never see them again, they hold zero power to judge the version of you that exists in this single fleeting hour. Our closest relationships operate under the exact opposite assumption. We assume that deep familiarity and shared history naturally create the safest possible environment for honesty. The people who know us best are supposed to be the easiest to talk to. Yet for many, the reality works in reverse. Deep familiarity creates a high barrier to telling the truth. The closeness that is supposed to make honesty effortless ends up making it feel like a risk. In a research interview on social connection, a teacher named Sarah described her 8-year marriage. She and her husband communicate beautifully about daily logistics, finances, and parenting, and yet she harbors a core part of her internal life, a specific, recurring sense of isolation that she has never shown him. Her silence isn't born out of suspicion. She trusts him. But because she didn't mention this feeling in year 1, it feels impossible to introduce in year 8. She describes it as an apartment inside her apartment that she inhabits alone. She's been meaning to show him for years, but the longer she waits, the more the silence becomes its own architecture. There is a name for this state of being, Exulansis. It is the tendency to give up trying to talk about an experience because you believe the people around you are unable to relate to it. This is a form of self-exile. It's the quiet, daily choice to stop being understood by the people who love you. To understand why exulansis happens, we have to look at the built picture. The people who love you have constructed a stable mental model of who you are. They rely on this model to understand their world. Your brain recognizes that any honest self-disclosure contradicting that mental model carries a cost. If the truth doesn't fit the story they've been telling about you, your mind registers that friction as a potential threat to the relationship's stability. To avoid that friction, you give the short answer, the safe answer. You present an edited draft of yourself that fits perfectly into their existing model, requiring no updates and causing no alarm. At first, it's just a conversational shortcut. But over years, these small omissions snowball. Entire facets of your personality, your fears, and your desires are sectioned off, leaving you to live a vast portion of your life entirely internally. The tragic irony of exulansis is that the energy you spend protecting the relationship by filtering yourself is exactly what causes you to drift away from it. These self-imposed exiles break in rare, recognizable moments. The mechanism behind these breakthroughs is what psychologist Elizabeth Pennell calls eye-sharing. Eye-sharing isn't about having the same hobbies or political views. It is the simultaneous recognition that you and another person are having the exact same in-the-moment subjective experience. You make a joke you weren't sure anyone would get, and someone across the table gets it, exactly, down to the precise thing you meant. Pennell's research shows that these moments have a measurably disproportionate effect on connection. People who experience eye-sharing become significantly more generous with one another. They compromise faster and demonstrate trust toward people they differ from in almost every other way. But here is the conflict.
you cannot have an eye-sharing moment while presenting an edited draft. Recognition requires a real target. The more practiced your performance becomes, the less of the actual you is available to be recognized. Marcus experienced this at a work event. A speaker described a specific, nameless distance between a professional persona and a real self, a feeling Marcus had lived with for years. He felt something crack open, not painfully, but with the quiet relief of a sound you'd stopped noticing finally coming to an end. He went home that night and gave his wife the long version. She didn't offer a cure, but she acknowledged the truth. By dropping the edited draft, Marcus offered a real target, allowing a moment of genuine recognition to finally enter the room. Simply finding the vocabulary for this isolation is a functional tool. Psychologist Lisa Feldman Barrett's research on emotional granularity shows why. When you experience a heavy, unnamed disconnect, your brain treats it as a crisis. Applying a precise name, like Exulansis, activates language processing regions. This physically dampens the emotional alarm system. The panic shrinks because you have a map. Naming Exulansis tells you exactly where you are standing. And once you know where you are, you can begin to navigate your way back. We often misinterpret this specific isolation as evidence that we are fundamentally too much or that we've made an irreversible mistake in our relationships. In reality, Exulansis is often a byproduct of taking connections seriously. You have spent time and energy protecting your relationships by keeping things out of them that didn't fit. You were trying to preserve something by not risking it. Priya, a woman who felt this isolation for a decade, found a text describing Exulansis and sent it to a friend of 9 years. The friend replied, "I thought I was the only one." They talked for 3 hours. Priya later said it felt, for the first time in years, like she was having lunch as herself. Ending your self-exile doesn't require a magical transformation where you tell everyone everything. It is the quiet, deliberate act of letting the door stay slightly more open than before. Stepping out of the edited draft is the only way to offer the world something real to recognize. It is the only way to transform the pain of isolation into the bridge of shared experience.